This presentation contains references to sexual and other material that may be distressing to some people. You're advised to think carefully before accessing the session and the quiz. Hi, I'm Professor Marilyn McMahon, Deputy Dean of Deakin Law School. Together with my colleague, Dr. Vicki Huang, I'll be talking about sexting, image-based abuse, and the law. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are working, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and their elders, past, present, and future. What do these people have in common? These people, famous actors, athletes, singers, and politicians, have all had intimate photos or videos of themselves posted online without their consent. The photos and videos might have shown them naked or partially naked. They may have originally agreed to have created the image, or had a photo taken without their knowledge and consent, or had a photo stolen when their computer was hacked. But none of them agreed to having those intimate images taken and distributed in this way. When this happens, we call it image-based abuse. And it doesn't happen just to famous people. In fact, image-based abuse can happen to anyone, and it is common among young people. An Australian survey reported that 1 in 3 teenagers between the ages of 16 and 19 had experienced at least one instance of image-based abuse. So we know that this type of abuse is a real issue for young people. In our session today, we will start by distinguishing image-based abuse from sexting with consent. And we want to emphasise that we are talking about intimate images and young people under 18 years of age. The situation is very different when one or both people is or are over the age of 18. We will describe some of the effects that image-based abuse can have on victims, and then consider how the law deals with this form of abuse. We're also going to just talk about some of the relevant laws. We don't have time to outline them all. And please be aware that we will be talking about laws that apply in Victoria. For young people living in other states and territories, the laws will be different. Also, we want to generate discussion here today. We're not providing legal advice. Importantly, we will also outline some of the main supports and actions that are available for victims of image-based abuse. Finally, we will give you a quiz to test your knowledge. We will start by clarifying some terms. We will call it sexting when young people consensually share intimate images of themselves, such as when 2 young people in a relationship share naked photos of one another. We know that many young people sext. An online survey conducted in Australia reported that 45% of teenagers aged 13 to 18 had sent an intimate image, and 67% had received an intimate image. So sexting is common. But although sexting is common, there are some serious issues that can arise. Before we move on to talking about image-based abuse, let's consider some strategies that might reduce the likelihood of it happening to you. You can reduce the risks by never including your face, tattoos, or other identifying marks in an image. Facial recognition software can potentially track your identity and name. Be careful that you don't include other identifying information in an image, such as your school uniform or a school bag in the background. Also, some photos can get geotagged by your phone for place and location. Check your phone settings to make sure this doesn't happen to you. Before sending a text to someone, make sure you know and fully trust them. Catfishing, where someone sets up a fictitious online profile and pretends to be someone else to lure you into a fraudulent relationship, and often to get you to send them some sexually explicit photos, is often engaged in by sex offenders and is more common than you might think. Don't send anything to a person you only know online. You can, of course, never really know if someone will share your images with others or post them online, but do not send photos or videos to people you don't know well. Consider varying your photos and videos so they suggest intimacy rather than are explicit. Make sure that you and the other person know one another well. Make sure that they consent to the exchange of the intimate images. No surprises here. Finally, be aware of age restrictions. The law puts a lot more restrictions on what young people can do in this space when compared with people over the age of 18. So much for safe sexting. What about when things go wrong and it becomes intimate image-based abuse? Image-based abuse occurs when things go wrong, when an intimate photo or video is created or distributed without the consent of the person shown in that photo or video. You might have heard the term revenge porn, but we don't think that term is accurate because people who engage in image-based abuse sometimes have motives other than revenge, and an image doesn't have to be pornographic. Often this abuse is part of an attempt by another person to exert power and control over you. Many people have noted that females and LGBTI people are more likely to be victims of this abuse. There are many ways in which intimate images can be distributed. Online and phone methods include text messages, social media posts, email, and uploading media to pornography websites. Old-fashioned offline methods might consist of putting an intimate photo of you on the desk of a classmate and leaving it there for them to find. No matter how the image is distributed, what is essential is that the intimate image is distributed without the consent of the person in the image. So the core issue here is consent, and the law regards consent as free agreement. So a young person who's been pressured or coerced into sharing an intimate photo of themselves will not be regarded as having consented. It's also important to note that this abuse isn't limited to the actual taking and distribution of intimate images without consent. It also includes the threat to do so, whether or not this threat is actually carried out. Additionally, images that have been photoshopped can constitute image-based abuse. When image-based abuse occurs, it is a crime, and the person who does it can be fined or sent to prison. To make sure we understand what intimate image abuse is, let's consider a few examples. Your ex-partner uploads an intimate photo of you to Facebook. You may have originally voluntarily sent the photo to your partner, but if he or she posts it to Facebook without your consent, this is image-based abuse. Another student photoshops an image of you with a porn star and puts it on a porn website. Laws covering intimate image abuse in Victoria include images that have been altered, such as happens with photoshopping. So the fact that a photo of you has been altered before being distributed doesn't mean it can't be image-based abuse. In the third example, the student who sent the intimate image, the photo of his penis, has sent it to you without obtaining your consent to receive it. This is also image-based abuse. Someone secretly films you having sex and threatens to share it with your family and friends. In this example, the original filming of the sexual activity was done without your knowledge and consent, and a threat to send this image can be intimate image abuse. Someone hacks your computer and steals some of your intimate photos and posts them online. Obviously, this was done without your consent, and it again constitutes image-based abuse. It's important to emphasise that the key element here is consent and lack of consent. The law uses a variety of words to describe consent. Basically, consent requires free agreement. Many of the instances we'll talk about involve alcohol or drugs. When alcohol or drugs are involved, there will be real issues about whether a person has consented to having an intimate image created about them or distributed. Some important background information concerns how widespread image-based abuse is and the impact that it can have on victims. The Australian E-Safety Commissioner had a nationwide survey conducted in 2017 to investigate whether people had experienced intimate image abuse. 1 in 5 people who responded indicated that they had experienced this form of abuse. Women were more likely to be targeted than men, and men were more likely to be perpetrators. As we've previously noted, young people like yourselves are particularly at risk. If we just consider people aged 16 to 19, 1 in 3 reported having experienced image-based abuse. And as we noted before, some people are more likely to be targeted. Those with a disability, those who identify as LGBTI, and people from Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander backgrounds. When considering the impact of abuse, it's interesting to consider the reaction of the actor Jennifer Lawrence. Lawrence and her boyfriend were working in different parts of America. She sent him several photos of herself naked, and some photos were sexually explicit. Her computer was hacked in 2014, and the photos uploaded to the internet. Lawrence has said that her first reaction was shame and humiliation, but then she thought about what had been done to her, and she came out fighting. She said, "It's not a scandal, it's a sex crime. It's a sexual violation." And she went on to add, "Anybody who looked at those pictures, you're perpetrating a sexual offence." And for many victims, the experience will affect their mental health. People who are victims of image-based abuse can be very distressed by what has happened to them. They frequently report a range of emotional reactions, including anger, humiliation. Many victims report feeling very humiliated and terrified when they think their families might see the images. Shame and self-blame are common, especially if the person who initially distributed the photo themselves to a partner or someone else. Victims can also experience a range of mental health issues, including depression, anxiety, lowered self-esteem and confidence, feeling very fearful for their safety, and even post-traumatic stress disorder. Victims also report experiencing a loss of liberty online. That is, they often withdraw from lots of websites and restrict what they do online in order to protect themselves. So the consequences of intimate image abuse can affect people's mental well-being and behaviour. Recognising the serious harm that can be done by intimate image abuse, in the last 10 years or so, parliaments in most of the states and territories of Australia have passed laws to prohibit this form of abuse. As mentioned earlier, there are many laws that are relevant here, but we will focus on just a few important ones. One significant distinction that we need to be aware of is that some laws apply to online and phone abuse and some apply to offline abuse, or both. The example of Josie and James here involves online abuse because James has threatened to post the intimate image to Facebook. It is a crime to threaten to distribute an intimate image of another person. On the other hand, when Josie's boyfriend takes a photo of her in the shower without her consent and shows the photo to his mates, this showing of the actual photo is offline, but it's still a crime to distribute an intimate image of another person. Here are some extracts from relevant laws. The Federal Enhancing Online Safety Act only applies to online activities and, as you can see, prohibits the posting of an intimate image without consent, as well as the threat to do so. To be an offence, this must occur in circumstances in which an ordinary reasonable person would reasonably expect to be afforded privacy. When we look at the Victorian Summary Offences Act, it prohibits the taking and distributing of images of the genital and anal regions, as well as intimate images of another person. It's also an offence to threaten to distribute an intimate image of another person. Again, for this to be an offence, it has to occur contrary to community standards. It's worth noting that more than 50 teenagers have been charged with these offences. Most cases have resulted in police issuing a warning rather than the case going to court. Now, I've been talking a lot about intimate images, and I'm sure that you all have a general idea of what type of image this means: naked bodies, sexual activity, etc. But laws use particular definitions, and so it is worth considering what the law defines as an intimate image. There are no real surprises in Victoria in the Summary Offences Act. An intimate image is one that shows a person engaged in sexual activity or in a manner or context that is sexual, or shows a person's genital or anal region, or in the case of a female, her breasts. However, you should note that an image of a person's genital or anal region includes where the person is wearing underwear, and the distribution or threatened distribution must be contrary to community standards. Under federal law, in the Enhancing Online Safety Act, the definition only applies to images posted online. An intimate image is one that shows the genital or anal region of a person. Again, it can be bare or covered by underwear, or the breasts of a female, or the person engaged in a private activity, such as undressing, showering, bathing, going to the toilet, engaging in sexual activity. But this definition includes a less predictable element. It includes an image of a person without their usual religious or culturally significant clothing in circumstances where the person who posted the image online was aware that the victim usually wore that clothing. And all these activities, for it to be an offence, must have occurred in circumstances in which an ordinary reasonable person would reasonably expect to be afforded privacy. Many people are surprised when they learn that consensual sexting overlaps with child pornography laws. Child pornography laws were made to stop adults sexually exploiting children. They were made at a time when it wasn't contemplated that teenagers would make and send sexually explicit images of themselves. And this is why the interaction of sexting, image-based abuse, and child pornography is complex. Putting it simply, making and or distributing intimate images of persons under the age of 18, even when done consensually, and even when you are creating or distributing an image about yourself, could possibly constitute child pornography. Why? Because under Australian laws, making or sending a picture or a video of a person under 18, including yourself, engaged in a sexual activity or in an indecent sexual manner or context can constitute child pornography. It's sometimes also called child exploitation material. In fact, in South Australia in 2017, a 17-year-old boy was charged with pornography offences after he took a photo of his genitals and sent them to his then girlfriend. However, in Victoria, the government realised there was a problem. These laws were meant to protect young people, not prosecute them. So changes were made to the law to protect those under 18 from some liability for pornography. Consequently, if you are under the age of 18 and you engage in consensual sexting and the following conditions are met, you are unlikely to have engaged in child pornography. First, there must be no threat, fear, or coercion involved in the creation or sharing of an intimate image, and it might be that you made and or distributed a selfie. That's not pornography. Or you made and distributed an image that doesn't depict a crime and everyone in the image is no more than 2 years younger than you. Or you received an unsolicited image and took reasonable steps to get rid of it. However, be aware that in some circumstances, under Commonwealth law, you might still be liable for child pornography offences, even if the sexting is consensual, if you are or the other person are under the age of 18. But it's unlikely that consensual sexting would be prosecuted in this way. What to do? I'll finish by considering some of the options available to a victim of image-based abuse. If someone threatens to distribute an intimate image of you without your consent or actually does so, stay calm. Remember, this is not your fault. Make sure that you don't destroy any evidence. For example, keep relevant text messages or emails. In some circumstances, it might be appropriate for you to contact the person who created or distributed the image, but only do this if it's safe to do so. Another option is to contact the social media service or internet provider where the images were uploaded. Facebook, Instagram, and other services have policies that require intimate images posted without the consent of the person depicted in them to be taken down. A further option is to talk about what is happening to you with a trusted adult. This might be your parents, a counsellor, or a teacher, or some other person. Other actions that you can take include contacting the eSafety Commissioner or the police. As I've previously outlined, image-based abuse is against the law. If it's happening to you, there are a number of relevant offences that could apply. Contact the local police and explain the situation to them. The facts of the matter will influence what laws they decide to apply. Another powerful option is to contact the E-Safety Commissioner. As we've noted, Commonwealth law prohibits the online sharing or threatened sharing of intimate images without consent, and the E-Safety Commissioner has responsibility for enforcing this law. Her office is very experienced in dealing with this issue. In the financial year 2019 to 2020, they dealt with more than 2,500 complaints of online image-based abuse. She has a range of powers to deal with the abuse, and it's a recommended strategy to contact her. What are the benefits of contacting the E-Safety Commissioner? Well, her office can act much faster than police. It works collaboratively to get an image taken down as quickly as possible. She's got good relations with many of the social media sites and will work with them to have that image removed as soon as possible. She can get images removed even when the identity of the original poster isn't known, by placing the burden on websites, service providers, and hosting services. This is vital in situations where you don't know how the intimate images were obtained and/or who distributed them. The Commission has achieved success where a service provider is outside Australia. This is a real benefit, as police often have difficulties in those circumstances with delays and applying relevant laws. There's one particular advantage with the E-Safety Commissioner where online image-based abuse is threatened. She can act proactively to prevent it happening. Now, let's see what you know about image-based abuse through our quiz.
Okay. Thanks, Marilyn. Now, guys, we're going to go through a quiz and try to apply some of the information and knowledge that Marilyn has given us onto some real-life examples. Now, just a reminder, we're not giving legal advice to you here. We're just trying to prompt your thinking by going through some real-life examples. Let's go to question 1. James, who's 16, emails Brodie, who's 15, a photograph of himself naked. They were shocked. They didn't know James very well, so they block any further emails from him. Could this be image-based abuse? Yes or no? I'll give you 10 seconds to log a response. One second to go. And the answer here for me was yes, it could be image-based abuse. And that's because we've got an intimate image that's been circulated online via email. And here, Brodie didn't consent. So it was an unsolicited communication to them. So James could have a problem here. Now, for Brodie, a good option would be for them to contact the E-Safety Commissioner. Brodie's done the right thing already by blocking further emails, but Brodie can also go to the E-Safety Commissioner to assist with some next steps. Question 2. Jane, who's 14, sent a photo of her breasts to her boyfriend, Peter. After they broke up, Jane asked Peter to delete her photos. He refused and told Jane he was going to put them on Facebook. Could this be image-based abuse? I'll give you 10 seconds to log a response. One second. And yes, I think this could be image-based abuse. Now, importantly, he hasn't actually put them on Facebook yet, but the mere threat to put them on Facebook could be image-based abuse. Here we've got an intimate image, and here Jane initially consented for Peter to have the photos, but she never consented for him to put them on Facebook. So Peter, merely by threatening to put them on Facebook, could have a problem. And if he actually does put them on Facebook without Jane's consent, he's also going to have a problem. So a good option for Jane is to contact the E-Safety Commissioner, who can give Peter a warning. And if the image does go on Facebook, the E-Safety Commissioner can get Facebook to remove the image. Let's move on to question 3. Peter is 16 and is at a party drunk, and he moons, so exposes his naked bottom to everyone. Another boy who's 16 videos Peter mooning and posts it on Instagram. The next day, Peter is upset when he sees the video. He hadn't realised anyone was filming him. Could this be image-based abuse? I'll give you 10 seconds to log a yes or a no answer. One to go. And yes, I think this could be image-based abuse. And remember, just because it's a video doesn't mean it's not counted as an image. So videos fall under the law just like still images do. So here we've got an intimate image that is a video of a naked bottom. Putting it on Instagram means it's gone online. And the real issue with this problem is consent. It looks like he wasn't aware that anyone was filming him. And even if he did know, he certainly hasn't consented for it to be circulated on Instagram. So the boy who posted it could have an issue with image-based abuse. And a good option for Peter is to ask the boy to remove it from Instagram, but also report it to the E-Safety Commissioner. Because one good thing about the E-Safety Commissioner is they sort of have superpowers. If the image or the video has gone viral, they can still get whichever websites or social media services to delete the image or video. Let's move on to question 4. Philip is 16, naked in the shower after a swimming practice, and he does an Ironman pose like this. He laughs because Kathy uses his mobile phone to take a video of him, but he is angry when he later learns that Kathy has a copy of it and posts the video on Snapchat. Is this image-based abuse, or could it be? I'll give you 10 seconds to log a response. One second to go. And yes, I think this could be image-based abuse. Now, importantly, just because it's on Snapchat and disappears doesn't mean it didn't happen. Here we've got a video of an intimate image, which is Philip being naked. Posting it onto Snapchat, even though it disappeared later, is still putting it on the internet. He did consent to the video, or it seems like when Kathy took the video, Philip is laughing and going along with it, but he never consented for Kathy to circulate the video on social media. So Kathy could have a problem here with image-based abuse. Again, a good option for Philip is to ask Kathy to delete all of the copies, or he can go to the E-Safety Commissioner to help him get the footage removed permanently as much as possibly can from the internet. Let's go to question 5. Amina wears a headscarf and veil as part of her religion. Mark told her she was un-Australian. He pulled her headscarf and veil off and took a photo. Amina was very distressed. Mark later posted the photo of on a website of an anti-immigration group. Is this image-based abuse? I'll give you 10 seconds to log a response. One second to go. And yes, this could be image-based abuse. Now, there are some provisions in some parts of the law that address religious attire specifically. So even though in this example, there's no sort of, sexy bits, the law does try to address this kind of harm as image-based abuse. So a good option for Amina is to go to the eSafety Commissioner to try to get the image removed. So even though our previous examples have dealt with social media, this one deals with a website. The eSafety Commissioner can ask websites to remove things or ask ISPs as well to help remove images that relate to image-based abuse. Let's move to our last question, question 6. Peter, who's 16, thinks it would be funny to put Josie's face, she's also 16, on a naked image of Emily Radikowski. As a joke, he emails the image to friends. Josie sees the image and is upset. Peter is surprised. He's a bit of a dim bulb. He hadn't meant to hurt Josie. Is this image-based abuse? I'll give you 10 seconds to log a response. One second to go. And yes, I think this could be image-based abuse. But there are two funny things about this one, or 3 or 4 actually. The first one is none of Josie's naughty bits are in the photo, but it could still count as image-based abuse. Secondly, Peter didn't intend to hurt her feelings, but it could still be image-based abuse. Josie has not consented for her image to be used in this way. A good option for her, particularly because she is distressed, is to try to speak to an adult about it. And importantly, go to the eSafety Commissioner who can issue warnings and also try to get any copies removed from the internet. Now, what we've talked about today in terms of the law is there to put boundaries around, some hard boundaries around what is acceptable and not acceptable. But really, social norms and social pressures are incredibly important, probably more important than the law. Law is really the last resort here. So if you do sext, please try to do safe sexting. Another thing to remember is not to forget your own moral compass. And you've probably heard a million times at school, be an upstander, not a bystander. And it really is true. Girls have to stick up for other girls. Boys have to say to other boys, mate, what you are doing is not cool. This applies vice versa. It applies to non-binary, it applies to trans, it applies to everyone. Peers doing the right thing is actually the best way to stop bad things happening. And if you are a victim of image-based abuse, please know that you are not alone. The law and the community have changed a lot over the last few years to really try to help you with a bad situation. Don't forget the phone numbers and contact details on page 1 of this slide presentation. As a reminder, you can call 1-800-RESPECT. We also want to remind you to talk to a trusted adult, a doctor, student, or counsellor. And remember, it is not your fault. You can also report image-based abuse to the eSafety Commissioner, and they've got some terrific resources there to work out pathways forward for you. If you are interested a bit more in the law, the Supre, the brand, has a great resource for younger teens. You can also read the legislation yourself here at OSLI, and that's free. Youth Law have a great fact sheet. We've got a link for you here. And they'll be talking to you tomorrow at 11 a.m. If you're interested on consent sexting. Again, we want to thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of Victorian Law Week. Thanks very much.